Hi guys, welcome to episode 2. In this episode, we're going to discuss adding and subtracting integers. So this is going to correspond with lessons 1.5 and 1.6. So in this episode, you will learn how to add integers using a number line, how to add integers using different strategies, and how to subtract integers on a number line. So we're going to start with talking about what an integer actually is. And so an integer is a positive or negative whole number. So when we think about negative integers, those are going to be whole numbers to the left of 0. When I think about positive integers, those are going to be to the right of 0. So as I go to the right, the numbers will be getting bigger. As I move to the left, my numbers will be getting smaller. 0 is neither negative nor positive. It doesn't have a value, so it is just 0. A positive integer is greater than 0. A negative integer is less than 0, and then again 0 is neither positive nor negative. So it's good to use a number line just when thinking about specifically ordering integers, and then when we're adding and subtracting, it gives us a good visual so that we can understand exactly what our sum or difference is going to be. So when we're adding integers, when both of them are positive, so when both numbers are positive, that's what you've been doing since second grade. You've been adding them together. So a positive plus a positive is more positive. If I have $5 and I get $7 more, I'm going to have a total of $12. So I'm getting greater, which means I'm moving further and further from 0, right? So I'm moving farther to the right. When both integers are negative, a negative and a negative is more negative. If I owe a friend $3 and then I owe them $3 more, now I owe them $6. So I'm getting more negative, which means I'm getting further from 0. So if we think about this in a picture, why that works, let me get this organized here. We can kind of draw a visual to help us think about why when we have positive we add, and why we have negative we also add. So if we think about 5 plus 3, and I want to think about this with the picture. Since these are both positive, I'm going to use positive or plus signs to represent these numbers. So I have 5 positives, and then I have 3 positives. Since I'm adding, I can think about this as combining. So if I combine 3 pluses and 5 pluses, I'm going to have 8 pluses total, right? Same thing, if I think about negative 5 plus negative 3, I use this parenthesis so it doesn't look weird if I have a plus next to a minus. So if I have 5 negatives, I'm going to represent those with the minus sign. And then I have 3 negatives. And since I'm adding, I can think about combined. How many negatives am I going to have? I'm going to have 8 negatives. So I have to put my negative sign in front of my 8, telling me, hey, those are negatives. So a negative and a negative gets more negative. Negative 8 is more negative than negative 5 and negative 3. Then for the positive side, 8 is greater than both 5 and 3. Okay. And if we think about that on our number line, for 5 plus 3, if I start here with 5 and then I add 3, I'm getting further from 0. If we think about negative 5 plus negative 3, I'm starting at negative 5. Negative 3 means I'm getting further from 0. So what do we do when one's positive and one's negative? That's when it gets a little bit tricky. So when I have a positive plus a negative, to know what sign your answer is going to be, you have to think about the absolute value of both of those numbers. So the integer with the greatest absolute value is going to determine the sign of the sum. I'm saying sum because we're talking about addition. So the answer to an addition problem is a sum. So the number with the greatest absolute value is going to tell me what the sign of the sum is. So for example, if I have negative 7 plus 8. So if I have negative 7 plus 8, this is a negative number and this is a positive number. And so when I look at both of these and I think about the absolute value, I think about how far are both of these numbers from 0. So if I have 0 here and I think about 8, the distance from 0 to 8 is going to be 8. When I think about negative 7, the distance from negative 7 to 0 is going to be 7. So which number has the greatest absolute value? It's going to be 8 because it's further from 0. So that means that my sum is going to be positive. So to me, it's helpful to put a positive there So I know that's what it's going to be versus a negative. So then when I think about what my answer is actually going to be, I can think about this on a number line. So I'm starting at -7. If I'm adding 8, am I getting closer to 0 or further from 0? So when I add 8, I'm getting closer to 0, right? So I'm going over to 0. This would be adding 7, getting from -7 to 0. I need to add 1 more to get to adding 8. So 1 will be my answer. So my answer is +1. We can just write that as 1. We don't need to put the positive in front of it. So this negative and this positive made a positive. Now, what about if the negative number is greater? So say I have -10 plus 4. So when I think about which absolute value is greater, again, I think about distance from 0. How far is -10 away from 0? It's going to be 10 away. And how far is 4 from 0? It's going to be 4 away. So this number is greater, meaning that my sum is going to be negative. -10 has a greater absolute value. So to get my exact answer, I can think about starting at -10. Since I'm adding 4, which direction am I going to go? Am I getting closer to 0 or further from 0? I'm getting closer to 0. I'm not going to cross 0, but I'll still be negative. So my final answer is -6. So the horizontal number line is a great strategy to use when we're adding, especially when one is positive and one is negative. But again, I know some of you, that's not your ideal strategy. So in class, we'll talk about different strategies as well. Okay, so moving on. Yeah, these are the different strategies that we'll talk about in class. Vertical number line, horizontal number line we talked about, and then drawing a picture I also showed you as well. So subtracting integers is a little bit trickier. So we're going to use the vertical number line as our strategy in this episode. And then in class on Monday or Tuesday, we'll discuss different strategies. So if we think about subtracting, so let's do our first example. So what if I had 3 minus 9? 3 minus 9, say that was my problem. So I'm going to draw a vertical number line, which means it goes up and down. It's kind of like a thermometer. That's the way that I think about it. So I have 3 minus 9. So I'm going to start with 3. So I think about 3, is that above 0 or below 0? It's going to be above 0. So I start at 3. If I take away 9, am I moving down closer to 0, or am I moving up further from 0? Well, if I take away 9, I'm going to be moving down. I'm going to move below 0 because this means I'm taking away 3. I need to take away 6 more to get to -6. So 3 minus 9 is -6. It makes sense that it's a negative number. I can't take away 9 from 3, right? 9 is bigger than 3. So that means that my answer is going to be below 0, and exactly it's going to be -6. Well, what about, let's switch this if I had -3 minus 9. So what if I had -3 minus 9? So now I'm starting at something below 0. So -3 is below 0. If I take away 9, I think, well, am I moving down further from 0, or am I moving up closer to 0? If I'm taking away 9, I'm going to be moving down further. So I'm going to be moving down 9 spaces. Where am I going to end up? I'm going to end up at -12. So -3 minus 9, I'm going to be below 0 at -12. Last example, what if I had 3 minus -9? So what if I have 3 minus -9? So again, if I want to think about my vertical number line, I'm going to start at 3, which is above 0. If I'm taking away a -9, I got to figure out which direction I'm going. So if I take away a -9, I think, am I moving closer to 0? I'm sorry, closer to 0 or further from 0. So this is where it's kind of funky. A negative next to a negative is actually going to make a positive. So I'm actually going to move up 9 spaces to 12. So 3 minus -9 is going to equal 12. We'll definitely be talking obviously more about these types of problems in class, but this is a quick overview of the vertical number line strategy. See y'all later.